8 days after arriving by small boat, an illegal immigrant or asylum seeker at the Epping Hotel sexually abused two people, including a 14-year-old girl. He's been found guilty, but it's hit the news because he's only been given 12 months. Meanwhile, mums and dads who protested outside the hotel were branded as racists, and ordinary English people have been given even longer sentences for social media posts. Is this even more proof of the two-tier system we live in? To me, this isn't just about one man in Epping. In this video, I'm going to share how this story makes me feel as a patriot, as a Christian, and as a father, and what I believe men like us, people like us, need to do to protect our families in a time like this. So just as a recap, if you've not heard this story, let's just look at a very brief summary of events on the BBC. So Hadush Kabatu is jailed for 12 months for sexually assaulting a woman and a 14-year-old girl in Epping. Now you'll remember, well, you may not remember, this is what kicked off the protests around the Bell Hotel in Epping. And this is what made Epping Council apply or take it to court to essentially have that migrant hotel shut down. The appeal was blocked at the very last minute by the Home Office, and so that hotel remained. Now, Kabatu, an asylum seeker from Ethiopia, was staying at the Bell Hotel, had been found guilty of attempted sexual assault, inciting a child into sexual activity, and harassment without violence. I don't know why the without violence piece is there. I mean, hey, anyways, his arrest led to a wave of anti-immigration protests and counter demonstrations in July. Now, this is an area where I take serious issue with, right? I was speaking to my brother-in-law the other day, and I asked him, what do you think about all the protests that have happened so recently? And he said, oh, do you mean the anti-migrant protests? And I said to him, that's interesting. Do you think every single person protesting is anti-immigration completely? And he said, well, no, probably not. And we talked about it, and it's clear that many people out there are anti-illegal immigration and anti like dozens and dozens of young fighting age men being crowded together in hotels at taxpayers' expense nearby schools and parks and families. But it was very interesting that the label and the narrative that's been pushed by the media has essentially made this seem like it's not about justice, nor about fairness or about protecting citizens, but it's actually a racially based protest. It's something that's far more hateful and insidious. And I think this is one of the things that's creating such a divide in our country. Ever since Keir Starmer, after the Southport attack, branded everybody who was out there protesting as far right and completely dismissed many of the legitimate concerns that people had, I found that there's been so much more polarization, because you've got people on the one side who will say we're anti these migrant hotels, we're anti-illegal immigration. But then people on the other side are hearing that and they're saying, no, we're anti-racism, stand up to racism. And this smearing of people and misrepresenting people is actually creating even more of a divide. And Jesus said, a kingdom divided against itself cannot stand. So delivering the sentence, the judge said to Kabatu, he knew full well his victim was only 14 years of age and that he posed a significant risk of reoffending. Now, this is crazy, but what's even more crazy is the fact that he's been sentenced. The judge has said that he's not eligible to serve any of his sentence outside of prison. He has to be in prison the entire time. But his sentence is only 12 months. Now, we're going to come back to that point, but just before we do, let's look at how he was caught, because I think this sheds a bit more light as to why local people especially were so angry, and why many people, myself included, feel really angry and unsafe for our children because of the current situation. So on the afternoon of the 7th of July, Kabatu tried to kiss the young girl on a bench in Epping before asking her to kiss him. The following afternoon, Kabatu encountered the same girl again and repeatedly tried to kiss her before sexually assaulting her. But this wasn't the first time he'd been doing such things. Shortly before this, he had sexually assaulted and attempted to kiss an adult woman who had offered him assistance crafting a CV. And upon seeing him interacting with a child, that older woman reported him to the police and he was arrested. Now, this is sick on multiple counts, but I can't lie to you. One of the questions that I'm wondering when I read this is not to blame anybody except for this sick man for what he did. But I'm thinking, why was this girl alone with him in the first place? Why was she sitting next to him on the park bench at all? And as a father, I'm thinking, what's going on? Like, where's her dad? Where's her mum in this situation? I've got young kids. I've got 3 kids. One of my daughter, very, very young, so she's not going to be, walking. And we homeschool as well, so it's a whole different situation. But I'm thinking, where are the parents to protect our children? Because clearly we cannot trust in the state to provide the level of protection that we need. It's the state that is housing the illegal migrants close to the schools, close to parks in this way. It's the state who are also issuing these sentences in a crazy, crazy manner. The reason why I mentioned the sentences is because I'm looking at the situation. I'm thinking, well, you've got people who were arrested and given even longer sentences for tweets they'd made online. I'm thinking about the Lucy Connolly case, where she was given a 31-month sentence and spent 40% of it in prison before being released. And now, I don't like what she said. I don't like what she tweeted. But it is mind-blowing, the fact that she was given essentially the same length of time in prison, but a longer total sentence than somebody who had physically assaulted a girl and a woman who had already broken the law by entering illegally. So for me, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, how on earth is it that as a nation, we punish sexual offenders the same, if not softer, than we punish people for what they post on social media? It's mind-blowing to me. Absolutely mind-blowing to me. Now, I'm not a legal expert, but I do know that sentencing does not come down purely to the judge. The judge in this case would have had sentencing guidelines and basically would have to map on this case where the crime fits those guidelines, and that's the sentence that's given. So it's not entirely his fault. Well, you could even say it's not his fault, the fact that this sexual predator only got 12 months. However, it does point to a broken system where people are given significantly longer sentences over what they post compared to people who break into the country and then commit sexual crime within 2 weeks of being here. At this point, it's also not clear whether or not this person is going to be deported. So again, that points to another part of a broken system and broken justice. What we've seen is that so many people have become political prisoners because of how they've been labeled. So even here with the Bell Hotel, or with the protest in Epping outside the Bell Hotel, you see here it's described as anti-immigration protests. Now that's very dangerous language, because we have laws that say if you're seen to be stirring up racial hatred, that you can be prosecuted. So when these protests are described in racial terms or in terms that can fall under racial hatred laws, you're putting a lot of people in danger. And when we see our politicians branding whole communities of people as far right because they want to protect their children, and I would feel, listen, if I found out that there was a migrant hotel popping up in my community, best believe I'm out there protesting. I'm out there with a picket. I'm getting a t-shirt. I'm doing everything because I will protect my children. And I want to make sure that my community is safe for my children. I moved out of London to make sure my family was safe. I don't want loads of people coming into my community that threaten our safety. And that's exactly what you have. Now, the Bible tells me that as a man, my responsibility is to provide and protect my family. And so when I look at the country as it is, and I see how inconsistent justice is, when I see how broken our asylum system is, when I see the boats arriving and see how it's all dealt with, that tells me I cannot put the safety of my family in the state's hands. I'm very grateful for many of the protections that we have, but it reminds me of the Rotherham scandal, where thousands of girls were abused and many men, many parents, many mothers were completely kicked to the side because of what happened. We saw that the Labour Party was perfectly happy to protect and to cover up the scandal so that they didn't lose political power. Like, this is the time that we live in. So I will not put protection of my family into the state's hands. I will look after my children. I will make sure that I'm with them whenever I can be. I'll make sure that they are safe. And I encourage you to do the same thing. Now, I don't know about this young girl and her family situation, but all I can do is pray that in response, her family will give her the protection that she needs. She shouldn't be feeling unsafe walking home from school. She shouldn't be feeling unsafe in these circumstances. And we need to make sure that our children are protected, because that is the responsibility God has given us. How do we restore safety and justice in our country? Let me know what you think down below in the comments. I'll see you next time. Peace and blessings.